that the Cleveland Cavaliers won the sweepstakes for Donovan Mitchell. They traded for Donovan Mitchell yesterday, and this is a great sign for the Lakers because now the Lakers can start pursuing trades with the Utah Jazz to get some of those role guys, right? The Bogdanovich, the Beasleys, the Vanderbilts. They already made a trade with the Utah Jazz, but they couldn't make the big blockbuster trade, I guess, so to speak, where they get several players in a deal until Donovan Mitchell was traded because the Jazz didn't want to liquidate their assets as far as, veteran players go until Donovan Mitchell was gone. Because if Donovan Mitchell stays, well, then, you want to keep the best team around him as possible. So now that he's gone, Lakers can step into the reign. Now, obviously, this would mean moving off of Russell Westbrook. And there is still talks and concerns that the Lakers may keep Russell Westbrook because they don't want to trade both first-round picks. But the Jazz, they have so many players on their roster, they have to unload some of them. They have like 20-plus players on their roster, and that's max than what they can retain going into training camp, going into the season. So going into the season, they need to make sure that they cut that roster down, and that's where the Lakers can step in. The beauty of the Lakers is the Lakers have a sizable contract in Russell Westbrook to where instead of the Jazz trying to find several individual trades, 2-for-1 swaps or taking on bad contracts or things like that, or even maybe having to give up assets in order to move off of some of these guys, they can just look to the Lakers and say, hey, we'll take Russell Westbrook. That's enough to unload 3 or 4 players, and we can do a 4-for-1 swap. Because, again, the Jazz, they have to unload guys. And there's no other contract like Russell Westbrook's contract where you can literally fit 3 or 4 guys into a trade. And the beauty is the Lakers, they need those many guys. They need rotation guys. They need those veteran guys. They got a ton of young, great players. But you need those guys that can, help lead the team, hit the big shots, that have been in the experience, these positions, things like that. And we definitely need some wing depth, which Utah has several, right? So it would be a great trade, mutually beneficial for both sides. Lakers will likely have to give up some assets, but I don't imagine the Lakers having to give up both first-round picks. Well, the big question comes, when are we going to see that trade? When is that trade going to happen? Why hasn't it happened already? Because of Donovan Mitchell. Well, first off, we had the Patrick Beverley. And the reason I want to touch on Patrick Beverley real quick is just because I've seen a lot of comments in my live streams and videos of people that were like, well, if the Jazz deal was going to get done, why didn't they just do that when they traded for Patrick Beverley? Patrick Beverley, much like Beasley and Vanderbilt, couldn't be aggregated into a trade for salary. Now, if it was being absorbed in cap space, then yeah, you're fine. So like, for example, say the Spurs who have cap space, say they just wanted Patrick Beverley. They could trade for Patrick Beverley, and there doesn't have to be filler. But let's say they wanted to trade Patrick Beverley and Bogdanovich. Can't do it. Not until the 2-month rule has passed. And that's why the Lakers were able to trade for him individually, because he was just the sole player rather than a collective of players trying to match salaries in order to get a trade to work. That's why the trade that happened that specific. That's why the Lakers went and got Patrick Beverley. So just because the Lakers acquired Patrick Beverley from the Jazz doesn't mean the Jazz can't do another trade. They almost always would have had to do the Patrick Beverley trade separately, or if they wanted Beasley or if they wanted Vanderbilt or whatever, they would have had to do those separately. The problem is it's easier to get Patrick Beverley individually than it is to get a Beasley or Vanderbilt. And that's where this video comes in, right? So obviously the Lakers, Utah trade. Right now, if the Lakers today wanted to do the Jazz trade, they could get Mike Conley, Jordan Clarkson, and Bogdanovich. But I don't want Mike Conley and Jordan Clarkson. I'm sure many of you don't want Mike Conley and Jordan Clarkson. And I'm sure the Lakers don't want Mike Conley and Jordan Clarkson. That would be the only trade they could do today because of, again, that 2-month rule. These players can't be aggregated. So you can't trade Beasley and Conley right now or Beasley and Bogdanovich right now until that deadline passes. So you may be asking, well, when's the deadline? Well, 2 months from the day that the trade happened is when it becomes official. So we have until September 6th when Beasley and Vanderbilt can become available. Now, here's the thing. We could get some news. We could get some traction. We could get a agreed upon deal. That is always a possibility. But realistically, the trade, if there is a trade, can't be official until the earliest of September 6th, right? So September 6th is when the Lakers could officially acquire Beasley and Vanderbilt. I'm not saying that they're going to get either. Obviously, the Lakers are going to try to get one, if not both of them, which I do think both are realistic targets that could be acquired. Maybe Beasley more than Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt might be a little tough. He's got some promising talent. He's a young guy. Obviously, the Jazz are a rebuilding team. But if you're the Lakers, you're still asking, right? You're still hitting up the Jazz and saying, hey, let's work out a deal for Vanderbilt. Let's work out a deal for Beasley. Like I've said, an absolute home run would be if the Lakers could get Beasley, Vanderbilt, Bogdanovich, and then either Jordan Clarkson or Mike Conley, because salaries, got to remember, the Jazz are hard capped. So we're going to have to take one of either Mike Conley or Jordan Clarkson, very likely, just because they can't, it's just the way it works. And the Jazz, they need to unload as many players as possible. And so if you do the math, Lakers can take on about $56 million. If you add Wynn and Gabriel, that brings it up to about 58, I think 59, something like that. But I believe Jordan Clarkson, Beasley, Vanderbilt, and Bogdanovich, you're good. Conley, it's a little close. Again, you probably get in that kind of swing. Very likely it's going to be a three-team swing or three-player swing where it'll be like Beasley, Bogdanovich, and Conley, or Beasley, Bogdanovich, and Clarkson. I think Vanderbilt's going to be tough to get, but who knows? Like I said, if you're the Lakers, you at least ask. You at least say, hey, what is it going to take for Vanderbilt? Obviously, the Jazz are going to want some first-round picks, but here's the thing. The Lakers are in a great position because the Jazz, again, have to unload players. You can't buy most of these guys out. You can't do a lot. You have to unload them. So you have to trade them, and they're guaranteed. Either that or you're cutting them. It makes no sense if you're the Jazz to do 5, 6, 7 trades rather than just doing one deal with the Lakers and you solve all your problems. Besides that, what are you going to get from those other teams? Because you have to match salaries. You have to, are you going to have to give up assets if you're the Jazz? That's kind of the opposite of what the Jazz are doing. The Jazz are trying to stockpile assets. So yeah, other teams want Bogdanovich, right? But you have to match. So are you taking on a bad contract now? And what, are they attaching a first to that? I don't know many teams that would be willing to give up a first round pick for a guy like Bogdanovich, unless you're moving off a bad contract. Like a team like Miami, like if you want to take Duncan Robinson, we'll take a couple of those players off your hands. But again, are you going to take Duncan Robinson's bad contract over the next several years, or Kyle Lowry or something like that? It doesn't make sense. Where Westbrook is the ultimate contract for the Jazz's situation because he is a clean board wipe. Like he comes in, you can buy him out, and then you are good, right? Because his money falls off the book. It's not a 4 or 5 year or even several year deal. It's just this year, here you go. Here's a bunch of players. There's your guys. Give us Westbrook. We'll buy Westbrook out. He can go wherever he wants to go. We'll get some assets in the deal. And then there's that. And look, I know some people don't want the Lakers to give up any firsts. And I've seen lots of comments of people that are like, why would you have to give up first if, the Jazz need the deal as much as possible? Look, Danny Ainge isn't going to help the Lakers just for the sake of helping the Lakers. Yes, we are helping the Jazz too, but we're in a position we need those players more than they need to unload them. They have enough quality vets. Like teams will give up assets for Beasley. Teams will give up assets for Vanderbilt. There's a team that'll give, a couple seconds or maybe a protected first for Bogdanovich. And then we're all the people that are like, why would the Lakers give up first? Those players are going to get traded, and all those same people are going to be like, oh, why didn't the Lakers trade for him? Well, because you didn't want them to give up a first. The Lakers shouldn't have to give up both firsts, but realistically, you're probably going to have to give up at least one first, but you need to be getting Beasley or Vanderbilt in that deal. Vanderbilt, he's young, he's talented, he's got size at 6'9". He was a real bright spot for the Timberwolves. If I'm the Lakers, I'm doing whatever I can to go get him because he's a guy that can help you now, but not only can he help you now, he can help you in the future too. Not just that, but the Lakers ideally want to keep one of those firsts because let's say you have to take Mike Conley, right? Let's say that the Jazz are like, we'll give you Vanderbilt, we'll give you Beasley, and we'll give you Bogdanovich, but you're taking Mike Conley. If I'm the Lakers, I'm doing that. Because you're getting two solid young guys that can help you now and in the future. You're getting Bogdanovich who can help you now and he's still an expiring contract. And also with all of these guys, give you that cap flexibility except for Conley. But if you can keep one of those firsts, and let's say Kyrie Irving does want to come, right? Let's say Kyrie's like, hey, I do want to sign with the Lakers next year. I'm not saying he will, or say it's another free agent. Let's say it's not Kyrie. Let's say it is another agent. Well, then you could use that other first to move off of Mike Conley, which he would be getting into a contract year. So it'd be it'd be easier to move him. So the Lakers can't give up both firsts in this deal, unless if you're taking on like Jordan Clarkson, then maybe. But even then, I still don't see why the Lakers would take on both deals. And the Lakers are trying to keep cap space preserved. So they're doing this juggling act, which is really tough because right now the Lakers have pretty close to a max next season as far as cap space goes to go try to get a guy like Kyrie or whatever. And there's already reports, because I know somebody's going to say, well, you're squeezing Kyrie into the conversation, because there's reports that the whole reason the Lakers are trying to preserve cap space is for Kyrie next year, which is still a real possibility. And so it pertains to this conversation of the Lakers don't want to take on long-term assets. So if you're going to take on a contract like Mike Conley or even a Jordan Clarkson, who Jordan Clarkson's on a more reasonable contract, he's making like $13.5 million a year, something like that. But if you're taking on those guys, you're going to need assets to move off of those guys if Kyrie Irving's coming. And if you're the Lakers, you were going to trade both firsts for Kyrie anyway. So if you lose a first to be competitive this year, and then next year you got to lose a first in order to go get Kyrie, it's the same result. The only difference is you're competitive this year too, and you're not just, kind of punting the season to wait for Kyrie next year. But ideally, I want the Lakers to try to go get Vanderbilt. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think the Lakers are going to be able to get him, but I think it's something worth, mentioning and bringing up. But again, remember, we can't get this deal done until September 6th. September 6th is the day that all of this could be official. So I wouldn't be shocked if we don't get any news until, the 5th or the 6th or something along those lines. Now, again, maybe we get some, spit in a handshake type agreement and we get a reported agreed upon trade once, things get done, because it is pretty close. We're not too far away from the September 6th date. So maybe they kind of work out they've prearranged the deal. They've worked it out. Maybe they already have the deal done for all we know, but they likely won't announce it as official until September 6th, because you have that 2-month rule. And again, Patrick Beverley was traded separately. You could trade for Vanderbilt separately. You could trade for Beasley separately, but you can't do them all in one swoop. So you might as well wait. And the good thing is that as long as the Jazz are waiting and haven't traded any of those guys, then it's a good sign that the Lakers are still in this deal. If the Jazz end up trading Bogdanovich or something, that's bad. That means this is probably done and we're probably keeping Westbrook for the year. But if we start approaching the 6th and no other trade is done, look for the Lakers to be that team that gets announced the 6th or later. So still got a couple days. But anyway, those are all of the information and my thoughts and opinions. And as always, I pass the question on to you. Let me know yours down in the comment section below. What do you think? Are you excited for this? Are you not? Are you hoping September 6th hurries up and comes along? Because we could really use it. However you feel about it, I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. That being said, hit that like button. Helps me out a lot. Lets me know you enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, followed by the bell notification. Stay up to date with all things sports. Join this wonderful community and all of our discussions. I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.